Baldwin IV of Jerusalem faced trials few rulers of the Crusades ever endured. Rising to the throne at an early age, he inherited a kingdom beset by internal strife and encircled by enemies on all sides. His greatest battle, however, was not against any rival army, but against the merciless affliction that would haunt him throughout his reign: leprosy. Though his body weakened, his will remained unshaken. Despite the relentless advance of his illness, Baldwin displayed remarkable tactical brilliance, leading his forces to improbable victories over Saladin, the most formidable Muslim leader of the era. His rule was a constant struggle, not only against his deteriorating health, but also against the ambitions of the Crusader barons and the looming threat of Jerusalem's fall. His life was a testament to resilience, warfare, and political strategy in the face of overwhelming odds. Baldwin IV may have been known as the Leper King, but his strength of spirit outlasted the decay of his flesh, leaving behind a legacy that would endure through the centuries. The Kingdom of Jerusalem had been established in 1099, following the First Crusade, when Christian armies under Godfrey of Bouillon seized control of the Holy City. As one of the most significant Crusader states, it quickly became a focal point of the conflict between Christian and Muslim powers vying for dominance in the Holy Land. Over the ensuing decades, the rulers of Jerusalem strengthened their position through military campaigns and strategic alliances. Yet their hold on the region remained precarious, with constant threats from formidable adversaries, such as the Fatimid Caliphate of Egypt and the warlords of Syria. To maintain their fragile grip on the territory, Crusader kings relied heavily on the support of the military orders like the Knights Templar and the Hospitallers, who served as both elite warriors and defenders of the faith. Baldwin IV entered this world of intrigue and warfare in 1161. At the time of his birth, his father, Amalric, was not yet king, but instead held the titles of Count of Jaffa and Ashkelon, standing as the younger brother of the reigning monarch Baldwin III. His mother, Agnes of Courtenay, came from a prestigious noble family in France, with deep ties to many of the Crusader leadership. While their union bolstered Amalric's status, it also ignited political tensions within the court, where several nobles challenged the legitimacy of the marriage. The untimely death of King Baldwin III in 1163, leaving no direct heir, triggered a succession crisis. As the late king's brother, Amalric emerged as the strongest candidate for the throne. However, his path to kingship was far from smooth. Many of the kingdom's barons, led by the Patriarch of Jerusalem, opposed his claim, using his marriage to Agnes of Courtenay as a pretext to challenge his legitimacy. The court imposed a condition: Amalric could only ascend the throne if he agreed to annul his marriage, citing both consanguinity and political concerns. Eager to secure his claim, he accepted their terms. In return, his children with Agnes, Baldwin and his sister Sibylla, were officially recognized as legitimate heirs to the kingdom. Now ruling as Amalric I, he embarked on an ambitious reign, marked by aggressive military campaigns, particularly against Egypt. By the time Amalric I took the throne, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was already grappling with mounting challenges. Determined to fortify his rule, he launched repeated invasions into Egypt, hoping to break Muslim resistance and expand his domain. However, his campaigns placed him in direct conflict with Saladin, a rising Kurdish general who would soon prove to be the greatest threat the Crusaders had ever faced. Despite the struggles of his reign, Jerusalem remained the stronghold of Christianity in the Middle East. Yet with each passing year, Saladin's power grew, his influence stretching across Egypt and Syria. Baldwin, growing up in this climate of war and uncertainty, was destined to inherit a throne beset with threats unlike any before him. From an early age, Baldwin's education was entrusted to one of the most distinguished scholars of the time, William of Tyre, a historian, theologian, and future Archbishop of Tyre. Under his tutelage, Baldwin excelled in his studies, mastering Latin, history, theology, and law, alongside military strategy and the cultural complexities of the region. Despite his intellectual promise, an unsettling observation began to take shape. William of Tyre was the first to notice an unusual trait in the young prince. Baldwin did not react to pain. During games with other noble boys, he suffered injuries to his hands and arms, but showed no sign of discomfort. At first, this strange condition was met with curiosity, dismissed as an oddity rather than a concern. But as time passed, the gravity of the situation became impossible to ignore. The revelation of Baldwin's illness would send shockwaves through the royal court. The earliest signs of leprosy marked not only a personal tragedy for the young prince, but a political crisis for the entire kingdom. While his intelligence and leadership abilities were undeniable, his condition cast a long shadow over his future rule, threatening to destabilize Jerusalem at its most critical hour. Whispers of scandal and dread spread quickly through the royal court. Leprosy, the most feared affliction of the Middle Ages, was not just a physical curse, but a symbol of divine wrath and impurity. When Baldwin, barely 9 years old, was formally diagnosed, shock and despair gripped the kingdom. His condition was more than a personal tragedy. It posed a political crisis. A ruler was expected to lead armies into battle, command unwavering respect, and project strength. Baldwin's illness cast doubt on his ability to fulfill that role. Physicians at court, powerless against the disease, could offer no cure. Instead, they relied on palliative measures, trying in vain to slow its inevitable advance. Meanwhile, debates over the succession intensified. Some nobles questioned whether a future king afflicted by such an incurable illness could secure the kingdom's stability. There were whispers of removing him from the line of succession altogether. But King Almaric I refused to yield. Despite the opposition, he stood firm in his decision. Baldwin was his rightful heir, and nothing would change that. Rather than retreat in the face of his condition, Baldwin displayed an unbreakable resolve. Even as the disease weakened his body, he sought to push his limits. He actively participated in physical training, refusing to be left behind by other noble boys. Horsemanship, a vital skill for any knightly ruler, became his strongest asset. His ability to master horseback combat impressed the court, proving that his spirit remained fierce, even if his body betrayed him. Beyond his military education, Baldwin grew up immersed in the politics of the Crusader states. He spent time among the kingdom's barons and closely observed the workings of the Knights Templar and the Hospitallers, gaining early exposure to the strategic complexities of rule. These relationships would prove invaluable, shaping him into a leader capable of navigating the treacherous realities of governing a state under siege. His mother, Agnes of Courtenay, remained a controversial figure within the court. Though sidelined after Amalric's ascension, her influence lingered. Many nobles saw her presence as a destabilizing force, fearing that her ambitions could disrupt the delicate balance of power among the Crusader factions. Baldwin's childhood unfolded in an atmosphere of constant instability. The kingdom was surrounded by enemies, and its greatest threat, Saladin, was rising to power, consolidating his hold over Egypt and Syria. From an early age, Baldwin was trained to rule in a time of war. He learned the harsh lessons of betrayal, battlefield strategy, and palace intrigue, skills that would define his reign. While his body deteriorated, his mind remained razor-sharp. His tutor, William of Tyre, praised him as a prodigious learner, gifted with keen intelligence and political acumen. Even as his health declined, his ability to govern with insight and diplomacy never wavered. In the beginning, the royal court attempted to conceal his condition. When the first signs of illness appeared, many clung to the hope that it was something minor, something he might outgrow. But as the disease progressed, the truth became undeniable. There was no hiding what was to come. While Baldwin matured under the shadow of his illness, his father pursued an aggressive military strategy against Egypt, which he viewed as the greatest threat to the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The struggle for dominance in the region had begun under Baldwin III, but Amalric saw an opportunity to exploit Egypt's internal turmoil and strike before Muslim forces could unify against the Crusaders. Amalric launched his first campaign into Egyptian territory in 1163. Shawar, the deposed Fatimid vizier, had fled to Syria, seeking aid from Nur ad-Din, the powerful ruler of Aleppo and Damascus. Amalric took advantage of the instability in Egypt and invaded the region, laying siege to Bilbais. However, the arrival of Nur ad-Din's army forced Amalric to retreat, preventing a more significant advance. In the following years, Amalric launched further campaigns against Egypt, forging temporary alliances with different Muslim factions. In 1167, he led a new invasion, this time with Byzantine support. His forces reached as far as Cairo, but after an inconclusive battle at Babain against the Kurdish general Saladin, the Crusaders were forced to withdraw, securing only the Egyptians' promise of tribute. Amalric's last and most ambitious campaign came in 1168. Determined to conquer Egypt once and for all, he launched an unexpected offensive against Bilbais, captured the city after a brutal siege, and ordered a massacre of the local population. This attack alarmed the Fatimids, who, fearing the total destruction of their realm, sought immediate support from Saladin, who at that time commanded the Syrian forces dispatched to Egypt. Saladin quickly gathered his troops and marched on Cairo, where he consolidated his control and strengthened resistance against the Crusaders. With the arrival of Saladin's army and Amalric's inability to hold his position without adequate reinforcements, the Crusaders were compelled to retreat, abandoning their hopes of dominating Egypt and allowing Saladin to emerge as the central figure in the struggle against the Kingdom of Jerusalem. These campaigns exposed the strategic weaknesses of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Despite some initial victories, Amalric failed to secure a lasting conquest, which ultimately favored the rise of Saladin's power and greatly enhanced his fame and prestige as a Muslim military leader, making him the Crusaders' greatest rival in the years to come. Throughout these campaigns, Amalric often took the young Prince Baldwin with him so that he could learn as much as possible about military strategy and the complexities of Middle Eastern politics. Baldwin closely observed the tactics of war, the challenges of negotiation, and the instability of alliances. However, he could not imagine that he would have to assume these responsibilities much sooner than expected, being forced to bear the destiny of the Kingdom of Jerusalem.